Hi, I'm Jack Baruzzini, and you're listening to The Secrets of Stargate, where I talk about the hidden meanings and deeper layers found in the Stargate movies, TV series, and more. And joining me today are Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father.
Howdy, Jack.
And Lisa Jones. Hi, Lisa.
Hey, Jack.
And Victor Lambs. Hey, Victor.
Hi, Jack.
Today we are discussing the 17th and 18th episodes of Season 7, Heroes Part 1 and 2. The President of the United States, concerned about the potential fallout of the Stargate program becoming public after he leaves office, commissions a documentary to put a positive spin on his association with the program. However, key members of Stargate Command are hesitant to participate, especially Teal'c there. And the reporter irritates SG-1 members so much, while all the while ranting about censorship. Meanwhile, on a distant planet explored by SG-13, a gold probe discovers the human team, leading to a firefight. Though the probe is disabled, it sends a signal before being destroyed, attracting a gold strike force. The SG teams are deployed to rescue SG-3, who are in danger, while Dr. Fraser tends to a wounded airman. That's a little teaser for the first part there. So, what are your thoughts on these episodes, Father?
These are a bizarre couple of episodes. I mean, because the first half, the first part 1 of 2 is kind of experimental. They kind of, they played around with, this is not really a clip scene, but it is kind of a, replay of the story so far type of episode. And they do some filming and some on tape. And the stuff that's on tape is the stuff that's being filmed for this documentary. And then the filming is the normal. And it's just kind of a bizarre start. And then we get to the second half and everything switches.
Yeah.
And we find out about, there's a death, there's this horrible accident, and one of the members is killed, and we're not, of course, they're keeping it from us. They're kind of doing a little sleight of hand, kind of redirection. Woolsey gets introduced and gets very much short shrift, although he becomes a much better character later. And it's just very different couple of episodes. I like it, but it's very different.
Yeah, it was. I feel like they did a weird tonal shift from the first part to the second part, from like comedy to much more dramatic, and there's a little bit of
very
whiplash.
So.
What about you, Lisa?
Oh, gosh, I think this is probably the best two-parter of Stargate ever. Heroes, it is very different. I mean, you start off that first episode and you're like, is this Stargate? Is it not? And I couldn't find if they intentionally created it to be different in tone. But I like that it builds. So you start out where it's closer to what true SG-1, episodes are. You have a little bit of witty humor. You've got, Jack walking away from the camera talking about getting pictures of his rear end. And, you've got Kinsey showing up in all of his flair. And then by the second half, you're just so roped in emotionally. You're on this journey with this journalist and with the members of Stargate Command. And I would love to say I know exactly what made this episode so wonderful. I would say first the writing, but the guest stars I'm not a huge Daniel Jackson fan, but I will say Michael Shanks really hit a home run here. He and Amanda Tapping. So a little bit of everything. Fabulous. Fabulous episodes.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Victor?
Yeah, I agree with Lisa. I think the writing and the acting in Stargate is never better than in these two episodes. The guest stars are phenomenal, especially Saul Rubinek, who is, amazing in everything, but I mean, really captures the essence. I mean, he comes across as very unsympathetic. Everybody in the SGC hates him, but by the time you get to the end of the second episode and you realize that he was doing a job, doing it well, and it was exactly what was needed, you've completely flipped on him. And this episode has a very weird history. It was actually filmed over the course of about 4 or 5 months. Just a little bit here and there. It was originally intended to be kind of all seen through the lens of the film crew. And so to be just kind of a fun episode where, hey, here's a documentary and we're just going to, explore the SGC through this document. And then, obviously the twist got added to it. along the way. They tried to cut it down to fit 42 minutes, and they could only get it down to about 64 minutes. And once they realized that they weren't going to be able to cut it down any longer, they added, I think, the Woolsey scenes, the intense firefight that you get on the planet against the Gould. That was all added in to expand this to a two-parter. Yeah, so basically they told the director, I think Andy Makita, because now he had the visual effects budget for 2 whole episodes, spend it all on this scene. And that's what he did.
Blow everything up.
Yeah. And so that's what happened. And then we get, I think, probably some of the best monologues, certainly, about, freedom of the press and how the press needs to be independent and serve independently, delivered by Saul Rubinek there. And it is, I think the writing and the acting is never better. There is, it is a little uneven just because of the way the episode was constructed and then being filmed over the course of, it was filmed completely out of sequence over, 4 or 5 months, but there's enough really good moments in there to, I think, elevate it to one of my favorites as well.
Yeah, definitely. Although I'm pretty upset about the death that happens, because I did not. I mean, I knew it was going to happen, but I didn't know it would happen in this episode. So it definitely caught me by surprise. So that's good writing there. Yeah,
that was the reaction when the second part of this episode came out. Because even like I said, the episode felt so bizarre because the first part is so upbeat and you got kind of the silliness and everything, but it's leading to the second part. And it's leading to what happens. And Stargate fans were shocked, understandably so. And I mean, that's what makes it so great. And I even admit, when we get to that scene where I know the scene is coming, I know we're going to see it. And it's still like, who let the dust in here?
Yeah.
Heartbreaking. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, it's coming, and it hits. It hits hard.
Yes, I have not yet teared up at an episode of Stargate, but this was one I did. Yeah, definitely.
And Robert C. Cooper on the commentary said, they wanted to show that there are consequences to what the Stargate, what the SGC is doing, and you can't really communicate that if it's just Ensign Redshirt, as he said, that you're being introduced to and killing off. So you really need to kill off a principal character. And there was, when he brought it into the writer's room and pitched it, they're like, do you really want to do that? They tried to talk him out of it a little bit. Certainly. But and even watching it again, the scene and we'll get into this, played back on a camcorder footage. He said, this is very difficult to watch. And part of that is what's happening, but also one of our other guest stars, who's playing, I think, Lieutenant Wells, the young guy who gets shot. I mean, he just does such a phenomenal job of selling, soldier with major injury and pain. But we'll get to that. Let's talk about the fun stuff.
By the way, I got to correct one thing.
Yeah,
he's senior airman. He works for
senior airman.
That's
right. That's right.
Yes, before we get to the Black Hawk Down portion of the episode, we can talk about what felt like just the way the camera angles were. It was like that handheld, like mockumentary style. It was like watching SG-1, but filmed by the office crew.
Because they actually do use video footage, and so it's very noticeable when they go from film to the no saturation, very bright video.
Well, it's very likely too that they actually used the cameras. Camera that was on set, so you're seeing it from the view of whatever actor happens to be holding it or whatever. But it's something I never noticed when I watched this the first time, was that it does flip between film, because SG-1 was done on film, and the video. But of course now with high definition and everything, it's very clear when it makes that switch.
Yeah. And so we do get some good, behind the scenes looks at the SGC. I loved, Dr. Lee is kind of Bunsen Honeydew showing off the staff blast armor and putting it on Siler and then blasting Siler with the staff weapon, and he flies through the air. And then later on we see him in the infirmary being tended to by nurses.
Well, I love he does that. Oh, that's all right. He does that all the time. Of course, he's a stunt double. Of course he does that all the time. That's a job.
Well, and Emmett's over there like, oh, put it on me. Like, wouldn't it be better if I did it? And they're like, No. And then when he saw him fly through the other air, he was like,
No, don't put it on me.
And Walter slowly talking through his realization that his job is pointless.
Well, and he still has
best.
the Norman Davis name tag.
Oh, does
did
he?
he?
Oh, wow.
Yes, he still has the Norman Davis
Name tag.
Air Force name tag.
That's
Oh my
hilarious.
gosh. Yes. And sometimes I just like to make it different. And I say, Chevron 7 locked.
Yeah, and then we get a nice scene with him even in the second part where it's still kind of funny where he's pointing to some of the equipment in the gate room and joking, saying like, and sometimes the airmen like to come in here and play a game of Space Invaders on it.
Yeah,
And
those
and
little
that was-
computers you see behind in the gate room there.
And
Yeah.
that was the joke until the Air Force, PR people who review each episode looked at it and made a note and said, no Air Force personnel would play video games on active duty. And Robert C. Cooper looked at this and said, oh, that's going in the episode. So he's saying, I'm joking, of course. No airman would play video games on active
That's
duty.
amazing.
Yeah.
I can tell you from
funny.
experience, yes, airmen would play video games on active duty.
So can we assume that the that part in the Avengers movie where the guy's playing Galaga on his system on the big like floating aircraft carrier is that a subtle reference to SG-1?
Yeah. But yeah, so much good stuff happening in there, especially as the SG-1 is so standoffish to Bregman and especially Teal'c.
Oh yeah, Teal'c was great though. It's like
that was great.
I'm here for the interview. You have to talk. Yes.
And that's where the that reaction gif comes from that you always see.
Oh, the indeed.
The indeed.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Well, then Carter's so excited about hers. I mean, she's the only one who's all excited, and she goes on a rant about the like how much output they're getting.
Oh, yeah.
with the
energy
that they don't have a DHD, but they still get the energy output and all that, and then you see the camera crew and Bregman, and they're like, "Can we just get a shot of the gate spinning?"
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, it's really cool.
And I'm like,
So funny.
I'm sitting there watching this go, that's actually interesting.
Yeah.
yes.
This is the geeky stuff we'd be interested in. It's like, oh, wow, it takes 10% more power because you don't have an actual DHD. That's cool.
Yeah.
And I like the part where the airman who's been assigned to kind of shepherd Bergman around is like giving his opinions on what genre of documentary he should be doing and all that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was good.
Go for cinema verite. And he's like,
Yeah.
excuse me. Yeah, that's Colonel Tom Rundell, who is like the Air Force PR person. So he's not completely read in. I didn't get this at first on the SGC. So he's not in the loop. So when, things do go south in the second episode, he's as in the dark as the film crew and Bregman are and has to actually get the reports. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the PR guy for all of Cheyenne Mountain, not just the Stargate program.
So he really wasn't lying when he said he didn't know what
Correct.
all the things of the announcements meant. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't really thought about that because all you see is the Stargate command in Stargate, but the rest of Cheyenne Mountain is still there. So there's got to be people who are on levels above them. I guess don't really know what's going on. Although with everything that's happened, I don't know how they wouldn't know.
Just that they have to evacuate every few months, and that sometimes they come out of the mountain and like 4 months have passed on the outside. And only one day has passed on the inside or something.
I like how they almost made you feel sorry for Bregman. Like he's there to document. He was read in. He's like all this, alien stuff and the wormholes, and it's like there's just nothing for him to video. Just people walking around doing their jobs, and no one except for Carter really wants to talk about it. So you almost feel bad for him in the beginning.
Yeah, Jack basically, like you said, just walks away from him, makes snide comments. Hammond says, I'm going to follow my orders to the letter, of the order and not give you anything beyond that. Threatens to call the president on him and stuff. And actually does call the president in part 2 to get him thrown off the base.
And Daniel does give him a little bit, but it's like, I was ascended. I don't remember. And,
I don't remember that either. I remember a little bit from before,
And the only one who wants to go ahead.
Oh, why did Catherine bring you in? Well, I don't know. You have to ask her. You know?
Yeah.
And the only one who actually wants to sit in front of the camera and talk is Kinsey, and he's just reading off his campaign speech, basically.
Oh, and I love that too. When Bringman calls him on, it's like, that seemed a little rehearsed. Can we do something a little more off the cut? I'll just fire questions at you. And he's like, no.
Nope.
Oh, yeah. I love Kinsey too. It's like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that they brought him in. I mean, what a great, I don't know if that was originally planned or they had to, that was an added, like, make extra scenes, but it was just great we haven't seen him in a while. So it was great to see him and he's still the same politician that he ever was.
Jack gets to tell him off, although it's kind of cut off a little bit by all the klaxons. And
I love that.
Yeah. That was great.
That was amazing. And I like what they do with the audio on the actual, like you're getting the audio that the camera crew is getting, and it's just like the loud noises, and every so often you're like one insult coming through.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason the alarms are going off is because SG-13 on the planet has found, and we get probably one of the best scenes with a non-SG-1 team as they're, they're coming through the gate and then they're walking across the field and taking bets on what they're going to find there, two-headed aliens or a lost city, that sort of thing. Adam Baldwin, of course, is excellent in any role where he gets to play a military person, which is just about every role he has, as Colonel Dave Dixon here. And, talking about his, being a father of 4 kids, which I appreciate. Yeah, it's worth watching just for that. Of course, my 11-year-old turned to me after that where he's talking about like, well, you figure that at that point you got 3, kids, you're too tired. You figure to have a 4th kid, you're too tired to do anything at the end of the day.
Too tired and crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. And my 11-year-old turned towards me and he's like, is that true? And I was like, yeah, no, that's just his opinion. He's just sharing his opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, they did a really good job of introducing that team really quickly and making you like them almost instantly. Like the banter they had going back and forth, and they all had their distinct personalities right off the bat.
Well, they're placing bets on what they're going to find on the planet.
Yeah.
Right off the bat. So they're talking about where are we going to find, on this and that, the other thing. And the one, I can't remember what the one guy said, but Colonel Dixon goes, "You're cut off from making smart comments."
Oh yeah.
Something like that,
Yes.
Because he said something like just blindly obvious. We're going to see trees, I think it was, or something like that.
Oh, he said trees,
Yeah.
Yeah. What's funny, because that scene is actually much longer, I think, than we've ever seen another SG team.
Yep.
We've never really gotten to explore their personalities or, show their banter, all that kind of stuff. And so when they're walking, you're like, okay, something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. Like there's a reason for this. And then nothing happens. And then I'm thinking, are we getting a spinoff? Were they introducing us, especially Adam Baldwin's character? Like, are we going somewhere with this? And then towards the end, I'm like, well, maybe it was just so we would care when they get in this firefight or whatever. So it stood out to me because we don't usually see so much of another SG team.
It was also a good way for them to have Stargate Planet of the Week flavor going into the episode, but then also not have it just be and Jack and Teal'c are off on something, doing something that they've done a bunch of times before. And because these aren't the principal characters, there's more. I feel like there's more at stake because you're pretty sure that none of the 4 main ones are going to die, but you don't know about these other guys.
Right.
Yeah. And you kind of think, especially when Wells gets hit, you think this is where we're going, right? This is who's not gonna make it.
He's the red shirt. He's not going to make it. He's the one whose wife is expecting, right?
Yep.
And Robert C. Cooper even said, you can say it's a cliche, the guy who's, he has a wife at home and she's expecting their first child and he gets shot, but that really happens. I mean, to people too. And of course we get Belinsky as well, who is kind of their science and their version of the Daniel Jackson. And he's wonderful as well. I wish we'd gotten more Belinsky.
Yeah, I love that. Dr. Jackson's going to die when he sees this.
Yeah.
Again?
But apparently the Goa'uld now have the little drones from
the probe droids from Star Wars.
Yeah.
They're like, what is it? And we're like, I've seen Star Wars.
Yeah.
Have you not?
They have a smart way of taking it down. Yeah.
Oh, that was great. Yeah.
So they're like, shoot the wall, and the wall falls on it and smushes it. And then Adam Baldwin, Colonel Dixon, make sure that it's really dead.
Yes.
Which sets up, Sam having to then, kind of get the readings off the crystals and figuring out that, oh yeah, it's a Goa'uld thing. And they go back to the planet and realize too late that it also sent out the radio message to attract all the different Elkesh and Jaffa, which we'll see more of in the second episode.
Yep.
Yes. Then we get the scene where Bergman is talking to Frasier over lunch, and he's which at that point in the show, I was still kind of feeling like he was just a sleazy director, and he's got his ring on, and so I assumed his story was made up. But I feel like maybe later on that's kind of brought back. But they did a good job with that connection there, and her talking about her daughter who's from another planet. I liked how she delivered that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really sweet scene, and you needed to see Frasier, in the first episode having kind of a personal moment like that with somebody, and Bregman flirting badly,
Yes.
She even called it, "Are you flirting with me?"
Yeah. I love the way she was giving him grief. I mean, she wasn't letting him get away with it. She was giving it right back. Yeah. And she just seems so, every time we see Frasier, she's stressed and there's a medical emergency or someone's missing or, something. And in that scene, she just got to be Janet Frasier. She got to be relaxed and friendly and just see that personal side of her. And of course, then second episode, we find out why they're showing that to us. But I applaud them because it just gave us another chance to see Taylor Rothery and doing just fabulous job as Janet.
And we forgot the scene where she's also willing to be in front of the camera and she's going over Jack O'Neill's records. Are you sure you got the approval for this?
Including his 3 knee surgeries that Richard Dean Anderson actually had in real life. Yeah.
I like the part where she says, and then there was the whole Hathor thing, which I cannot talk about.
He asked me not to talk about it. And I like how the knee surgeries is just kind of thrown in among all the other crazy things, like him turning old, getting implants, and an incurable disease, and
the things in his shoulder, and
We also found out that there's a reason why they were doing this documentary, and it wasn't just because of the president, but because it was going to be the 1,000th travel through the gate. Which, of course, Jack O'Neill says, "Well, we need cake.
Yes,
we should have a cake for that."
Always a cake.
Yeah. So the second episode, Heroes Part 2, was the 150th SG-1 episode.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So not the 1,000th, and they do get their cake for episode 200, I think.
Nice,
finally. So
if we'd planned out our schedule a bit better, we could have had that lineup because we're at 146 right now.
Oh,
there we go.
Yeah. Well, but and so then we end on not really a cliffhanger, just with a shot of SG-1 running through the SGC, kind of second guessing themselves, and they're headed off someplace, but we don't know where.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we know where, but Bregman and the film crew don't.
Yeah. And we get into the second part where it really does feel like it's just a continuation of what's been going on.
I love the way it opens.
Things get intense. Yeah.
Before they get intense, right? So in the first episode, Bregman talks to Dr. Jackson and says, "I've been reviewing your camcorder footage and it's really boring. You're always just pointing at like ancient ruins and stuff. Would it kill you to just like point your camera at something interesting?" And so part 2, what we get early on in part 2 is Bregman and the people who are helping him, working on a couple Macintoshes, editing the episode down. And it's a really good look into Bregman because we've seen him do the interviews and he's dressed like all in a disheveled kind of outfit, and then we get to see the inserts that he filmed afterwards where he's wearing a suit asking questions, and we get to see that he's not trying to play gotcha with Sam. He's editing to not make them look like fools or idiots, and at one point he has footage of himself asking a question saying like, I would think, or people would think that I would think or something. And he takes it out because he realizes that nobody cares what he's think. That's not what he's there for. He's not to insert himself into it. He's there to tell the story. But at the end of the day, without any footage, without, the moon landing footage, it's just boring. And so he throws up his hands and, and disgust at how boring it is. And that's when we flip to the biggest action sequence in SG-1 history.
Yeah, and they do a good job right there at the beginning because he's kind of set up as he's basically the antagonist of the first episode. And you get to see from his point of view that he's just trying to do his job too.
Yeah, and actually, I did like in the first episode where nobody wants to talk to him, just to go back there, and they're like, well, we did have a bad experience with the film crew last year. When they stole the Prometheus. But yeah, and then it cuts to, we get the action on the other planet, and then it cuts to the film crew again in the hallway as, people are coming back, and we have no idea what's going on, only that, he's trying to film Sam. Sam's crying and says, turn that darn thing off to the camera. He, surreptitiously keeps the camera running. It just shows that like a gurney is going into the gate room. And then Colonel Ronson turns off the camera, and everybody's looking at, Bregman like he's the bad guy. And he delivers that like really amazing speech about the freedom of the press. Press have to be independent of the politicians and the military. Think what I'll think what you want about me, but you serve the people, and so do I. And it's just a really powerful speech. And apparently right before he gave that, he had been arguing in his trailer with Robert C. Cooper about something. Robert C. Cooper didn't elaborate, but but came out and delivered this thing like half of his face is like paralyzed because he's so furious. He's just spitting out these lines, and then he gets to the end of that, the yell cut, and he completely flips back to just his normal demeanor. Goes like, "How was that?" Just to show he's in complete control of it, of his craft. At all times.
Nice.
Yeah, that was. There were a couple of good scenes like that where he. Because he was getting frustrated. He was really upset, just because he kept getting stonewalled, and he was there. He wasn't there to make them look bad. And, I eventually he realizes why. I think, he starts to understand, first of all, I mean, from the first part where they don't want anything to do with him because they're living lives of secrecy for all these years. It's hard to turn that off, but also because of what then happens.
Yeah.
Later on.
Right. I was going to say, because in the first episode, he even mentions when he's talking to, I think he's talking to Hammond, and he talks about how there were cameramen on the beaches of Normandy. And then in this second part, that's pretty much what you get with him.
Yeah. And I think it was Hammond. Was it Hammond that gave the speech saying, I don't want my, when you put a camera in there, you change how people respond and react.
Yeah.
And so I thought they did a really good job of, you understand Bregman, once you realize he's not out to get them. And you're like, yes, I get it. Like freedom of the press. We have to document these things. We don't want everything operating in secret, and we want to preserve it and all of this. And then on the flip side, you really get where Hammond and the rest of the SGC is with not wanting, to be followed around with these cameras and what's going to happen and how are you going to tell our story?
Right. And I kind of felt that line about the camera because I recently had to record myself celebrating Sunday Mass. And I haven't had to do that since seminary when we would do mock masses, practicums. And it was just like, it's in the back of my mind the whole time. That stupid camera's right there. I can see it out of the corner of my eye.
Yeah, once there's a camera on you, like your brain like allocates too much resources to that, and you're not able to function normally. We actually had that happen one time. They were doing like promotional videos at work, and so we had a camera crew in for the whole day, and they would just like follow people around and film what they were doing, and it was insanely uncomfortable. And we're not doing anything that is like high stakes, like the SG-1 team, but it's still just.
You're at an event and there's like a reception or something like that, and someone's got a camera, they're filming it, and you're like, every time that camera's pointed, you're like, don't look, don't look.
So during the big off-world action sequence, I neglected to mention we see they're firing shoulder launched missiles at Jaffa. They're flying through the air, and then Jack takes a staff blast like full on
Mhm.
collapses. You know, we see a bomber like flying over him, dropping bombs. We see the shadow of the bomber flying overhead. And that's when we cut to, you know, Gurney. Sam is very distraught. We know that somebody's been killed. We don't know who. And I think they do a very good job. Like I said, I was watching this with my son. He's like, "Is Jack dead?" You know, they keep you
Well, yeah.
guessing.
With
that for as long as
We
they
don't
possibly
see him.
can. Yeah,
Like Bregman goes off about, you know, we don't know anything.
Yeah.
I can't get any information, and so the two airmen and the PR public affairs colonel go off to kind of scout around, and they come in. Oh, he's hurt, and he wasn't moving, and
Mhm.
oh, it was Colonel O'Neill, and so everybody immediately is like, they killed off Jack.
Yeah.
then,
I love that when he goes down, you're talking about the ship flying over him and stuff, but then they give you in slow motion, Carter, yelling, "Sir," and running.
Yep.
And then you see Teal'c coming. And I just love the way everything slowed down for that moment. And then so that it just adds to the drama of, did they just really kill Jack? Because, he hasn't been around much this season.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think word would have gotten out that
"Uh-oh."
he was, going off the show, or that, at some point
He was trying to get off the show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then they bring in Woolsey because the NID needs to investigate. They've lost a very valuable in monetary
before
terms.
Woolsey comes in, you see the team reacting to this death. Let's not skip over that. I mean, you see Sam and Daniel both reacting to the death. You see even Teal'c. Talking about Sam being asked to say a few words at the memorial service. Again, don't know who it's for. We just know there's a memorial service coming up.
And obviously someone close enough to Sam that they would ask her.
Yep. And even Teal'c, where he says, like, if I was asked, here's what I would say, and gave it to her, which was actually really, really cool. And we get to get to what he wrote. Very impressive.
And I love the scene where Carter and Hammond are talking.
Yeah.
And he asks her how she's doing with it, and they talk. But then she turns it and asks Hammond how he is. And he gives this wonderful speech about, you would think, everyone's supposed to basically be the same or mean the same to me, but some people grow closer to you. And it was just such a, I'm just watching Donis Davis say this and give this, and it was just such a powerful moment. And this whole second episode, they just did such a great job of conveying the emotion of the military and the armed forces. And like you said, that consequences are real and happen. And just what a tribute.
And it can be that quick.
And I think it's more effective having who dies die. I don't know if we're going to just go ahead and spoil it now.
It's Frasier.
Frasier.
Yeah.
Yep.
But then, because I feel like if it had been Jack, the SG, all the principal members of SG-1 have been killed at some point, I feel like. And so it's like, well, they've been killed before.
Sam, maybe not, but she's been taken over by Tok'ra.
Daniel's
and
been
the
killed
energy
enough for all of
thing
them.
and the
Yeah.
And Jack's even been killed like numerous times by Ball and as well as by the alien
Teal'c
illness.
with his getting rid of the symbiote and all that, and
but Frasier is not someone you really think of. I mean, and she's a major character, but then she's not in that way. She doesn't usually go off world, like bad things don't happen to her. She's the person who puts all the people back together. You think about, how many times has Daniel died, or, and she's even when we were talking about Lifeboat, she was the one in the room, like trying to control all of the personalities in his head. Right? She's the one that puts them back together. So she's there on a medical mission. You don't think she's the one that's going to get hit.
right.
Yeah, she's like the anchor point for everybody.
Yeah.
The one thing I really liked, and I think that's what makes it such a powerful scene, is how they show Janet's death.
Yes.
It's Daniel Jackson's there. He's trying to help her with this airman who got shot, and I want to say something to my mom. I want to, or my wife. Can you record this? And of course, he's screaming and he's in pain, and all of a sudden you see the blast come through out the corner of the camera, and just right off camera, and then turns to show her laying there. I mean, it's just powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and apparently, the film is, Daniel doesn't want to share it with Bregman. Hammond, orders Bregman off the base. There were some scenes filmed that make this more clear, but Bregman actually goes and calls the president, which is why they go from Hammond throwing him off to suddenly he's there and Daniel's giving him the tape.
Right.
When they showed that to Saul Rubinek and the two actors playing the film crew, that was the first time they'd seen the footage. And they thought they were just going to be looking at like a blank monitor, but they actually saw the footage for the first time, as they were recording the scene. So their reactions were pretty genuine there. But
that's awesome.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So very, very interesting there. We talk about Robert Picardo now.
Yeah, now we can go on to Woolsey.
Yeah.
Now that we've gone through the big thing of the episode, now we've got Woolsey's first appearance.
Woolsey.
Cool.
Yeah.
Much more significant going forward.
Was this was his first, huh?
Yep.
Yes.
Couldn't remember.
Yeah. So he's kind of the NID. We don't know this initially. Sam talks to Agent Barrett and gets some background on him, which I thought was a nice callback to Agent Barrett. But he's been brought in to investigate the death of a valued member of the SGC. We don't know who it is yet, and is kind of interrogating them. This part felt a little tacked on, I think, probably because it was. But so we get a cool, stylish interrogation scene. But it's later revealed that he's really there to see if the actions that they undertook justify the loss of like a $28 million or whatever it is. Every life has a price on it.
Right.
Type thing.
Well, it's like a $27 million team for one person.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Risking the life of the team. And given what we know now about where Woolsey's character goes through the rest of SG-1 and then into Atlantis, it's just really cool to see him as kind of irredeemable at this stage. And then how he becomes kind of a comic foil and cool character later on.
They do redeem him next time we see him. I mean, in a pretty big way, actually. But I will say that was one of the most impressive scenes where Robert Picardo, who always plays kind of more mild, meek characters, stands down General Hammond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
General Hammond's getting his good bluster going on. And if you say anything about this, I'm going to bury you under the jail and you'll never see the light of day. And it's like,
Yeah.
I was just waiting for Hammond to say computer end program and have him disappear.
Yeah, Donis Davis has a lot of really good scenes in these two episodes. I think this is some of the best General Hammond that we see.
Yeah, we definitely get to see a lot of them. That's for sure, which is good.
I think that this almost makes me wish that the show had been more of had a larger ensemble, because when you get more, because you have the four main team members and then you have the supporting characters like General Hammond and Fraser, but giving them more time and taking some time away from the SG-1 team, I feel like balances everything better. And so I think that they did a really good job with all the other characters in this, and it makes everything work really well. And so I would wish we had more Fraser earlier on.
Yeah.
Well, and that's we're going to bring up our Star Trek reference, because we always got to have a Star Trek reference, but that's why so many fans, at least I know myself, Dom and Jimmy and many others, DS9 is our favorite Star Trek because they did that. They had the main crew, but then there was a secondary cast that was just as good, and they figured out how to use them in ways that were so well done. And so it really fleshed out the entire ensemble. Quark was just comedy, he's the comedy figure. Well, he becomes a popular figure. Nog and Garrick and all these characters are brought in and they really flesh them out, and that's what makes it such a great series. And this is one episode we see with SG-1 where they can do that here as well. They just really didn't do much of it.
Well, you think about how many times we've had guest stars, and we can go back and listen to our podcast, and how many times we say, great actor, didn't use him well.
Yeah.
And in this episode, you think about how many guest stars names we know, that they had in this episode, and they used all of them very well. In addition to all of SG-1 and Donis Davis and Taylor Rothery. And we'll say Walter and Seidler. They really, it was so well done.
I love the contrast that they set up between Bregman and Woolsey, because Bregman was he was affable, he was trying to bring out the best stories from him, and of course they were fighting him. And then Woolsey comes in and is like, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to figure out what happened, and heads are going to roll if I don't like what I see, type of attitude.
Yeah. Just to go back to Frasier's death, like most of the time, especially like earlier on in TV, I feel like Game of Thrones kind of changed everything with how they kill characters on TV. But the fact that her death is so sudden, like you don't get any sort of speech from her or anything. It's just bang, she's dead. Like that was very affecting.
Joss Whedon did that all the time with his characters, like just out of the blue, like they're talking and a bullet hits them or they get ripped in half. On Buffy and Angel, it was just like, this is like a beloved character from like 7 seasons. And you just, or a lot, what they did with Firefly and Serenity, it's like, oh, I guess that's my favorite character. And he just died. So, well.
Yep.
Yeah. But in this case, you get the memorial service for Frasier.
Yeah.
And I think that was a great, conclusion for her, because not only are they really talking about her and who she was as a person, who she was in the military and the SGC, but they're really talking about all of the servicemen and women that are lost, and their roles. And so they just did a great job of, giving us a little bit of Janet Fraser in the beginning, more so than we've had in, a long time.
Yeah.
And then her death is so sudden. And then we get to see Sam, and we see Carter, and through Teal'c, or Teal'c through Sam, give that speech about all the people that she saved and the lives that she saved.
Yeah. And that sequences into the final video, or not quite the final video, that Bregman's prepared and is showing it to Hammond, and it's the American flag and the patriotic music and the photos of, the servicemen and about how they risk their lives for our freedom. And he turns to Hammond and says, hopefully it's not too corny. And Hammond just says, no, it's good. And gives a speech about how many letters he's written to the families of fallen, service men and women. And he always wishes that he could do more, and that this is something more, which, completely redeems Bregman and is just a really good Hammond moment there as well.
Yeah. And there's only one thing missing.
Yes.
Of course.
And we don't get to see the interview with O'Neill. He sits down for it and just says, okay. And it's a really good way to end the episode. And Robert C. Cooper did say that he's never seen Richard Dean Anderson that serious ever on the set of SG-1 as he was for that last scene where he...
So he didn't slip in another Mary Steenburgen reference?
No, not that time.
I do love that we didn't talk about it, but when Bregman first catches O'Neill, he's heading into the elevator. I like vanilla over chocolate. My favorite color is peridot. I think Tibet should be free, and if I could have dinner with anyone in the world, it would be Mary Steenburgen. No, if I could, Mary Steenburgen.
Yeah. And that's I don't know if y'all remember, like first or second season, he brought her up too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, with Ergo.
Yeah. So
Ergo
it's just
too is
kind
like,
of,
yeah.
I don't know. I think that I don't know if they know each other, but it was one of those like first person I thought of, it was an ad lib and it just came out kind of a thing.
Well, then Carter's like, so Mary Steenburgen?
Yeah.
Well, she's so hot.
Yeah.
And I love that Wells, because he does pull through, and his wife has the baby daughter, and they name her after Janet. I really like that.
Yeah.
That was a really touching scene to have Daniel go and bring the little teddy bear.
Nice touch. Yep.
One thing that didn't work as well for me, and I don't know if it was the way it was delivered or the way it was written, where Bregman's trying to convince Daniel to give him the footage, and he tells a story. It's a fictional story, thank goodness, about a photographer who was embedded with the troops in Vietnam and was pulled down by a serviceman who, and his camera happened to take a picture just as the serviceman who saved his life was shot.
Yep.
And he couldn't look at the photo for years and years and years. And then finally he looked at it and didn't see just a person getting shot. He saw a hero who gave his life to save him. And that's kind of what helped convince Daniel to, in the end, convince Bregman to use the footage. It's a fictional story, thank goodness, but
Story was a little on the nose. I mean, it was a little over the top, but I know they needed an emotional speech to get through to Daniel. So,
and I was afraid that it was going to come out later that Bregman had made the whole thing up, because I don't think it's a Stargate episode, but I know there's an episode of some show where they have a story like that, and it turns out, I just made the whole thing up. The guy doesn't even exist. Type of kind of a hand wave away, and it's just like, this isn't that, is it? Nope.
I'm glad they didn't do that.
Yeah, that would really take
I'm
in
also
the
glad
energy out of it.
that he did not turn out to be a Cylon, just making a documentary, and we get that reveal at the very end. That's what it made me think of.
He's a replicator or something.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, now I've got them.
Because there's an episode of Battlestar Galactica that is very similar to this, and I think this came before that.
Final Cut is the episode
Mhm.
of BSG.
Yeah, it's like this crew coming in and they do a documentary, and no one is really cooperative. But then throughout that, they see that they're actually being protected, and it kind of ends up the same way. But then at the very end, the whole film crew is Cylons, of course, because they have to be.
I can't remember when Battlestar was. Oh, it's about the same time period.
They
Around
are
the same time, but
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
I did read that some of the controversy about killing off Frasier wasn't as extreme as it might have been, because they really thought this was the last season.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how many seasons? We're on season 7. How many seasons have they said, but this is the last season? So they again thought this was the last season. So
with Atlantis coming out, they thought they were going to jump over to Atlantis and not keep doing SG-1.
And with Richard Dean Anderson still trying to, I hate to say, get off the show, to go spend more time with his daughter in California. So they just kept getting renewed and scrambling for how to keep the show going.
And then we got the wondrous day of Sci-Fi Friday.
Oh, yeah.
I loved that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was SG-1, Atlantis, and Battlestar Galactica.
I did look, that episode was 2005. So Final Cut. So it was a year after this one.
Nice.
Yeah, as we record this, it's almost the 20th anniversary of this episode.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
End of February.
Wow.
2004.
Kind of crazy.
I couldn't find anything about this, but was Tara Rothery looking to get off the show, or was it this just we're going to trim people down because we're not going to get renewed?
No information on that either way that I could find. I mean, she'd only been on the show like 2 or 3 times this season so far. So.
Yeah. And she is still working a ton.
Oh, yeah.
In Vancouver shows. So I've never looked for that.
Awesome. Do we have any alternate language titles for this, Victor?
No, it was all Heroes Part 1, and then, as you might expect, Heroes Part 2.
Nice.
So no Das Frasier ist kaputt or anything from the Germans this time.
For sure.
Yeah, I know.
There would have been a spoiler there.
Nice. Do y'all have any other thoughts on these episodes?
Nothing here.
I really like them. Yeah, I mean, watch them, and it is kind of, I think, some of the best writing and acting that you'll see on Stargate.
I agree.
Yep, it's a better Stargate movie, 2 episodes combined, than the original Stargate movie.
Very much agreed.
Yeah. Awesome. We do have some feedback all the way back from episode 84, Entity. Kyla Kinnenborough said, I'm just getting back into the podcast after the break, and I'm delighted to find out that Jack is back. Thank you for your honesty. It's helpful for people to know that they are not alone. I'm looking forward to catching up on the podcast and continuing to hear your voice. And I really, really appreciate that. Everyone was super supportive around that time, and it's good to be back in the swing of things and keep going with it. So thanks very much.
Yeah, I was very glad to hand the baton back to Jack. I'm willing to fill in once in a while, but not full time.
Yes. Well, I do greatly appreciate it. Awesome. And before we go, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secret to Stargate, including Ben S., Susie S., Brian T., Tim H., Ron T., and Betsy. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secret to Stargate and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And be sure to follow the show on Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio. And you can find the video versions at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. And to find previous episodes of Secret to Stargate and to send feedback, please visit sqpn.com/Stargate. And you can email us at stargate@sqpn.com or follow StarQuest on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia or on Twitter at SQPN. And we'll be back next time. We'll be recording the next episode of SG-1, Resurrection. Until then, Father Cory, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Stargate.
Thank you, Jack.
And Lisa Jones, thank you as well.
Thanks, Jack.
And Victor Lambs, thank you too.
Thanks, Jack. And you turn that camera off when I tell you to turn it off.
I'll do that right now. Once again, I'm Jack Baruzzini. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Stargate on StarQuest.
Anyway, I'm sorry, but that just happens to be how I feel about it. What do you think?
I had to do it.
Nice. That was good. Yeah.